I am here with Adam from Plugged In. Hello, Adam.
How are you doing today, Andy?
Fine, fine. We are here to talk about all the wondrous, splendiferous reviews that come
That's
out of
right.
Plugged In. I like to do this every so often. Just give us a quick reminder what's Plugged In all about.
Plugged In is a ministry of focus on the family here in the United States and around the world, actually. And what we want to do is give you and your family the information you need to make the best decisions possible, really from a discipleship perspective with regard to entertainment and technology. So we're probably best known for our movie reviews, which is usually where we start our conversations each week. But we also review TV, video games, books, YouTube channels, music, and things that are going on in the tech realm that you and your family need to know about. So we love talking each week and just keeping you guys up to date on what is happening that should be on your radar.
I do like that we have covered movies and we have done YouTube videos, channels, music. We've done musicians. We've done board games. I think have we done a book yet as well? We really
I
have
think we
covered
have, yeah.
quite a broad range, which is what I really really appreciate about Plugged In because it's not just his latest movie or his latest CD. Actually, it's so much more than that.
Yeah, it is. And there's so much happening out there that yeah, it's impossible unless you're just sitting at your computer surfing all day for most of us probably to know what's happening, which we want to be the cheat code. We want to be the shortcut that gives you what you need so you don't have to spend all that time.
I do remember cheat codes, slight tangent, perhaps, but not necessarily. So you'd buy a computer magazine. This is going back mid late 90s. So we're talking some older stuff. And there was a
Yep.
game that we played, and the cheat code was about 4 pages in the magazine. And of
Yep.
course, you break into the game, you'd type in all the code, you were checking everything, and something didn't work. So you think, well, I've just spent me £4 on the magazine, I've just spent five
Right.
weeks inputting the code, and it doesn't work.
Right. And
Is it worth cheating?
it should have felt like the moral lesson was implicit there, correct? Right.
Shouldn't
It's
it
like, oh,
just?
I shouldn't have been a cheater in the first place. I should have just played the game.
Absolutely. Anyway, where do you want to start with us tonight?
Well, let's start with a movie, and it is called The Legend of Ochi. And it is in theaters. This comes to us courtesy of the studio A24. And over the last few years, A24 has brought us a lot of junk. I mean, a lot of really explicit, nasty movies. And so it's interesting to me that they have pivoted, it seems like, at least this time, toward a PG movie here in the US. So, one that really has been judged to be appropriate for the most part for kids, not even PG-13. And we don't actually see very many PG movies anymore. That rating has kind of gone by the by, so to speak. But this sort of feels like somebody binge watched everything from the 80s, from Gremlins to E.T. to the Goonies, and said, you know what? Let's do a movie like that. It feels like a throwback movie. It is about a young girl, and her name is Yuri. She lives on the island of Carpathia. This is a fantasy movie, and there be monsters. There are
Hmm.
monsters lurking around their village. The monsters are called Ochi, and they're fearsome, horrible, bloodthirsty beasts. And one day, Yuri is sort of outside the confines of the village proper, and wouldn't you know it, she finds a baby Ochi who looks a lot like Baby Yoda with fur.
Okay.
That would be the way I would describe this particular creature. And if you go to pluggedin.com, you'll see the picture of it right there on the review. And she's like, oh, he's just a cute little guy. She doesn't say that, but that's, basically what's communicated. And so she decides to take the little baby Ochi back to its family. And this really is a movie about broken families, about dysfunction, and it's a little bit about a critique of religion, because this fear of the Ochis has taken on sort of that orthodox, this is how we see the world kind of thing, and the girl's pushing back against the prevailing idea here. But she's courageous. It's a pretty fun movie. There's some profanity here. That's probably the biggest deal, and frankly, all those other movies that I mentioned from the 80s have more profanity than you remember too. So don't necessarily go plop those in your DVD player or stream them. We still have a DVD player, so we're very old. Um, I think that it feels like a throwback and a fun movie for the most part if you keep those particular caveats well in mind.
I don't mind a throwback movie. In fact, I quite like the 80s and the 90s films because, a bit like the music, which I do know more about, the further you
Yep,
go back in time, the more you're easily able to access without having those, oh my goodness, what did they just say or do moments. So
exactly.
as you go back in time, I don't think like in the olden days, in old fashioned, it's not that. I just think like it's interesting you're saying that there's a PG, not even a PG-13. And I think there's an awful lot that's coming at us now, whether it's music, books, games, movies, where there's an expectation that we are now, apparently as a, advanced culture, more okay
Right,
with profanities and all that kind of stuff, when, do you know what? Actually, I'm not okay with those, and I'm still not okay
right.
with those.
Well, and I think I'm going to just take a slight tangent here. Um, I think that we can often think, Andy, of culture as just getting worse and worse and worse. And certainly, I think there are ways in which it continues to deviate from a biblical understanding, in increasing ways. But I think the thing that's interesting is I think culture is more like a hurricane. It rotates. And so some things get better and some things get worse. Like if you go back and look at movies from the 70s and 80s, tons of people are smoking, right? Nobody thought anything of it. And it's really rare to see that these days. And so even as, I'm totally in agreement with you. Some things are just like a lot worse than they used to be. We have actually developed new sensitivities, and there are some things you don't see as much of that you might see. And some of those old movies, if you haven't seen them for a long time, I can't remember. Have I told you the story of my wife and I trying to watch The Goonies? Have we talked about that?
No, you haven't.
So this was probably 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, where you could still buy DVDs in the bargain bin at the supermarket or wherever. She's like, "Hey, I got the Goonies today. We can watch this with the kids." And I said, "Okay, we can try." I said, "I guarantee you there's more content in this thing than you remember." And at that point, our kids would have been like, 6, 8, and 10 maybe. Um, there was a lot more content and a lot of language. And so I think it's also easy to sort of have that romanticized view of the past. And we go back and look at some of those things. It's like, whoa, that's way worse than I remember it. And we're trying to go back at Plugged In and actually pick up older movies too for exactly that reason. So anyway, I'll get off my little soapbox here. There's always good and there's almost always problems. And so our job as parents and as families is to figure out what can be a redemptive entertainment alternative for our family, and where there are problems, how do we think through those?
Which is a really good lesson. I don't even remember the name of a film. My wife and I, let's bring this to the kids. It's a really good movie, and we're sitting there thinking, oh, this is terrible. Not because of the language or anything else, actually. It was just, this is so old fashioned, dated, looks
Yep.
terrible. Some older films pre CGI days, they get away with it. Either they kind of own the fact that, hey, you know what, the sets are wobbling. It's fine. Like Neighbours from Australia, when they shut the front door of one of the houses, the half the set's going to wobble. And you just think, that's fine. It's just a
Yeah.
daily soap. But actually, I've
Yep.
forgotten the thing. But we watched the film and thought, oh, this is too naff. This is awful. And it wasn't the content, it was the quality 40 years
Yeah.
further on.
Yep. No, that's right too. And some stuff, it just doesn't hold up,
Yeah.
right? And you remember it being so amazing, and
Yeah.
you watch it again, and you're like, oh, this is cringy. We saw Back to the Future recently, which is an 80s classic. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cringy. It doesn't hold up very well for me. And then my wife slapped me. So, no, she didn't. She didn't. No abuse in our house. Just clarify that. No need to call social services on my behalf.
Well played, sir. Would you like to give us one more thing to finish today?
Yeah. Let's talk about Andor. Did you watch the first season of Andor on Disney Plus by chance?
No, we did not.
So Andor is a Star Wars show. Andor is far and away the best Star Wars thing I think that Disney has done since they purchased the Star Wars franchise. And it tells the story of Cassian Andor, who's played by an actor named Diego Luna. And Cassian Andor, if you saw the movie Rogue One, he's one of the main characters in Rogue One. And so last season, we sort of got his origin story, how he got roped into becoming essentially a rebel spy. And even though it's set in the Star Wars universe and we do have laser beams and such, spaceships, these feel more like spy thrillers than Star Wars movies. And so they are trying to basically infiltrate, steal, and resist the Imperial, the Galactic Empire. And they're really, really well written. The first season was incredible. And this season, they're doing 12 episodes each week for 4 weeks. They release 3 episodes at a time. And then between those gaps, you jump forward a year each week. So it takes us right up to the events in Star Wars and what's happening with this nascent rebellion as it comes to the fore. If you are a Star Wars geek, you remember Mon Mothma as one of the female leaders of the rebellion. She's the one sort of giving the briefing toward the end of Star Wars. Her character is incredible here, and where she came from. And what I really like about this is it's kind of a slow burn. It doesn't feel like Star Wars. It's very gritty. There's quite a bit of content for Star Wars. We're still in that PG TV 14, 13 territory. But this is Star Wars for grown-ups and thinking people. And man, the character development is outstanding. My wife and I watched the first couple episodes, and it doesn't disappoint, which it's the only thing Disney has done since Rogue One that I would say doesn't disappoint. So if you're a Star Wars fan, man, Andor is worth the watch, with the caveat, of course, that you go to Plugged In first and make sure that it's good for you and your family.
Amen to that. And the website for people to go off and do that would be?
That would be pluggedin.com. And we have a podcast each week, The Plugged In Show, and that is at thepluggedinshow.com. And this week we're talking about what makes a great family movie. So you can take a listen to that as well.
Adam, Plugged In, thanks kindly.
You bet. Thanks, Andy.
Here at Pure 24/7 Radio, we have had the privilege of speaking to some amazing people with amazing stories.
Now, what about, I thought I'd go a bit further, what about goat and sheep's milk?
Yes.
Becoming quite popular. Very similar to cow's milk. So we don't use it in the first year of life, you can afterwards. And their nutrient profiles, how good they are, is pretty similar to cow's milk. Allergenicity, how often do they cause allergies? About the same. They're a bit more expensive sometimes. It's pretty equivalent.
Yeah, we're really excited, especially excited for Josh because it's his first book and he's really passionate with that Gen. Do you say Gen Z or Gen Z? I've heard it said in
I don't know. I'm too old. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not in that age category, so we've not got a clue what they're called.
It's a pot boiler. It's a good, exciting popcorn thriller. I didn't think it was anything too special, but I think watching it at home, people will probably enjoy it more than I did going to the cinema to see it. Really good film.
I love it. I walk into a cinema and I turn my phone off. Nobody can get hold of me for a couple of hours. I'm in a completely other world. Every single time I go to the cinema, and for me it's like going to Oz. It's like going to another world and escaping and relaxing, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
If you have missed any of these interviews or would like to hear them again, you can. Simply head over to our catch-up section at www.pure247radio.org. That's www.pure247radio.org.